if we need to break down lifestyle, like Krysta's lifestyle might be totally different from Toni's, or you and I being entrepreneurial, like our lifestyle is very different from someone who's, say, a nurse, and they have different challenges that you and I just aren't going to face when it comes to the really obvious one I think of with any type of client I work with who may do shift work is like they don't have time to sit down and eat. So then maybe we do need to have a conversation. Yeah. And maybe we do need to have a conversation about like when is the appropriate time to grab a protein bar versus that being like your only source of nutrition. Then we have an issue. Or are you not recovering enough and we don't need to have a food conversation? We need to really deep dive into realigning your sleep. And that's not going to happen overnight by any means because we're talking about habits. Right. And what I feel often than not is just that everything you and I are saying, and to tie it back to this whole contradiction with marketing, is none of that sexy.
Let's link up with Krysta on the Fix. She's a wellness coach with a focus on mental well-being and physical strength.
Hello, Fix listeners. Welcome to episode 53 of the Fix podcast. It's another week, and that means we've got another amazing guest to join the show. This week is Toni Marinucci. She is a fellow podcaster. She's got a great Instagram called Tips with Toni, and most recently is a newly minted author. Toni is a registered dietitian out of New York, and she wrote her first book that is called Once Upon a Diet. And if the name is any indication, yes, it does relate to dating. So she actually put together an amazing body of work that draws parallels between why dieting and dating have a lot more in common than you think. And part of the title of the book describes bad habits and breaking up with those bad habits in order to get back to your health and lead with and follow your heart. So Toni and I talk all about the major life lessons that she's learned through her dating life and her personal life, and how a lot of that mirrored, and those relationships really mirrored the type of relationship that she had with food. And one of the big things that we address in the very beginning of this episode is all about the idea that you can't punish or hate yourself into loving your body, because it's not coming from a place of abundance. It's not coming from a place of being happy and content and satisfied with where you are right now, but recognizing that you just want to make some improvements. And we tend to lose sight of that really often. And I think this conversation is so appropriate as we head into the new year. We're just days away from 2022, just a few days away from Christmas. If you're listening to the episode on the date that it drops, we are all kind of thinking, I could wait until next week, or, oh, 2022, January will be here. And then I'm finally going to kick all my workouts and fitness and nutrition and anything health and wellness related. I'm going to kick it all into high gear. Chances are that'll last for a couple weeks. And then maybe by February, maybe even by the end of January, if we're being honest with ourselves, it all might come to a halt. And we'll come up with a reason why that diet doesn't work. Well, this outlook that Toni's put together and really summed up so well through her work is the type of advice that I would strongly encourage anybody listening to take to heart as you think about your approach going into this new year. I actually did an Instagram post about this just the other day, and the idea, and this is not a quote of mine, but it's a saying and a phrase that I love, that old ways don't open new doors. So if you keep doing things that you've done in the past, you're probably going to get the same result over and over again. And I think something that Toni and I, we kind of laughed about it in the moment, but also reflected on too, and we're open and frank about. We can see that a lot in relationships. We try to make things work when all of the red flags are clearly there, or we feel like there's a certain type of person that we want to be with and try to force that kind of relationship, even though it's just not meant to be. And those people aren't our people, and that's completely okay. It's so key to understand that we have to make the same realization when it comes to how we look at food and how we look at our relationship with food and our relationship with our bodies and our fitness and nutrition goals. So great little thing to think about as you're framing up what you want to accomplish over the course of the next 12 months. It's a time of year when everybody's really big on their reflection and goal setting going into a new fresh start, something about that January vibe that just gets everybody going. And I think that this will put it into a very real perspective for you guys on how to meet yourself exactly where you are and look at the whole you, look at the whole picture, understand that how you approach dieting may have so much to do with your personality, and that trickles into every other aspect of your life. And if you can understand that we need to take this well-rounded approach, that focusing on your nutrition and setting nutrition goals and setting weight loss goals or whatever you might want to accomplish will have such positive effects on your professional life, your personal relationships, your social life habits, whatever it is, that it really actually has nothing to do with food at all. It's just taking you in as an entire individual. So if you listen to this and you're like, I need to know more, which I have a feeling you'll want to know more. I've gotten the chance to read a little bit of the beginning of Toni's book, and I'm really loving it and can't wait to dive a little bit deeper into it. We've got a little special hookup for all the FYX listeners out there. So what do you need to do? Jump down into the show notes and go right over to the link that's at the very bottom of the show notes from Toni that she gave me. And the first 10 listeners who fill out the form, it's a really quick form. It's just like your name, where you heard the podcast episode, and your contact information. The first 10 people to do it are going to receive a free copy of Toni's book. So if you're listening to this, and even if it's a year later, you'll hear Toni mention this at the very end of our recording, go ahead and fill it out anyways, because you just might get your hands on another little freebie regardless. Hope you guys enjoy this conversation. As always, share it with a friend if you feel like it was impactful in some way. And wherever you're listening from, have a very Merry Christmas if you do celebrate. And we will be back next week with another episode before we head into 2022. Toni, welcome to the FYX podcast. I'm so excited to have you on the show today and can't wait to talk about your business and, most importantly, your new book. We'll plug it right out of the gate. Once Upon a Diet. I just love the name and can't wait to talk about how you came up with it. But before we get into all of those details, I'd love for you to get acquainted with the FYX listeners by answering our first signature question, which is, who is Toni Marinucci? But more importantly, why should we care about what you have to say?
Oh God. Okay. So who am I?
Pressure's on.
Yeah, that's like a deep question. I am a woman first and foremost, and a proud one at that. I think women are awesome. And I have a long history of going about dieting and dating in very rigid, restrictive, crazy, toxic ways. Which hence is my book, Once Upon a Diet, is all about how I healed from that and finally found balance in my eating habits and realized that happiness wasn't at the end of whether I was in a relationship or not. And all that to say, why should you care about who I am and what I have to say is, if you've ever struggled with your relationship with food or your body, and you ever felt in this place where it was kind of hopeless, and you didn't know what to do, what to eat, how much to eat, when to eat it, you felt like your weight was tied to your worth, or you still do feel that way, then you're going to want to care about what I have to say, because I myself have grown a lot, done a lot of internal work, helped a lot of clients come to this place where we're finally at peace with our body. We've made peace with food, and we now have balance in our eating habits. And we understand that we can be both healthy and happy regardless of the number on the scale and regardless of our relationship status. So if any of that resonates with you, you're definitely going to want to listen to what I have to say.
Well, I am just really excited to get into that parallel, because as you know, from us getting, the brief introductions out of the way before we booked this conversation, I have been through a journey with my personal relationships as well, and have been open about talking about what happened on social media, but I haven't really taken it the step further to tie it to nutrition. And now that I am back in the world of dating again, I think that it's, as soon as you said it to me and you were like, this is the impetus for the book, I'm like, oh my gosh, so many people need to hear this. And it's so relatable and it's so true. And I know this will come up throughout this conversation. And so we'll treat this like a little preview of the rest of the chat. But I think that one of the things I've learned in working with a lot of different clients, but especially women, is that we don't realize that a lot of the, let's call them food rules that we carry or hang on to, have nothing to do with food. Like sometimes, like most of the conversations, I shouldn't say sometimes, I should say really 89% of the time, making up some statistic, that a lot of the conversations I have with clients who really see results and are really putting in the work and effort, we're talking about things that aren't about the food choices that they're making specifically. It's the environment, it's the relationship, it's this other person, it's their job, it's all these external factors that just like come together. And maybe we don't take a step back and have that unbiased opinion of someone else trying to dissect and understand, like, why am I carrying these things with me, and why are they then showing up as it relates to my plate or whatever it is.
100%. You're definitely not wrong when you say that.
Yeah. So we'll break that down a little more. But before we do, I want to know, what is your go-to coffee order? What do you like to sip on in the morning?
Okay, so I mean, like for daily coffee,
you could do both if you have like a specialty drink.
So like basic, like every morning I do like Cafe Bustelo with a little bit of half and half. I'm super basic, but it's delicious and it's simple and I love it. When I want like a little bit of a treat and I feel like I want something sweeter and exciting for my taste buds, I love caramel. Like love caramel. So I'll usually do like a latte, or even just like the same way like coffee, which is half and half, but then I have them add caramel, and it's just such a game changer. It's just so
now
good.
I have to ask, just in jumping right into some of the food stuff, were you a person that at some point you felt a little guilt or a need to kind of eliminate those sorts of things from your diet, and how has that changed for you?
Oh my God, absolutely. I mean, I used to love, so it's like so crazy because I could think of so many different stages of my journey of where I was at with my relationship with food. Like frappuccinos were my favorite thing ever as a teenager, right? Like I was obsessed with them.
Yeah, I feel like they were really popular around that time when we were in like middle school and high school.
Yeah,
exactly.
If you grew up in the 90s, like you were super cool if you got a frappuccino. So white mocha frappuccino, by the way, best. Actually, I haven't had that in a while.
I was a mocha frappuccino girl, but I couldn't tell you the last time I had one. And it's totally because I also realized like there's so many other things I personally love to eat that it just wasn't worth it for me.
Yeah.
But I also think in kind of, you know, where I was going with the question is like, you can take that to the extreme of like, I now have this rule like X, I'm never going to have this thing again.
Yeah. And that's basically what I did with like everything I used to enjoy. I basically went to this stage in my journey where like it wasn't allowed. So it started with fast food. It started with sugar. Then I went to sugar. Then I went to no refined carbohydrates. So only whole grains. Then it went to, I mean, I could go down a rabbit hole. I became a vegetarian. Then I became a vegan. Then I became a gluten-free vegan. It just became more restrictive. And it never was about enjoying the food, liking the food, paying attention to really anything that actually mattered. I was just so fixated on wanting to lose the weight that I thought what I was doing was helping, but it actually wasn't helping at all. But yeah, so long story short, I've been in so many places when it comes to like feeling guilty for coffee versus feeling guilty for sweets versus feeling guilty for like too much pasta. I mean, like all the things, you know, but I actually like really early on not early on. It took me a little bit to learn this lesson, but I eventually learned that restriction wasn't the answer. It's actually part of the problem. Like when we restrict, and especially on an extreme level, it's always, you know, our bodies are so incredible at balancing us out. We're always going to overcompensate, whether it's psychologically or physically. Our bodies are always looking to come to equilibrium. So what ends up happening after long periods of restriction is usually long periods of binging, which then led to me over exercising and then restricting again and then overeating again. It was just this vicious cycle that I know so many women can relate to. And it's because of what you said earlier, which was a really, really great point, is we're constantly being bombarded by these messages outside of ourselves and influenced by so many other people. We never really sat and clearly identified what works best for us. And so that's why it becomes so challenging and so inconsistent in just trying to live a healthier lifestyle.
Yeah. And I think people are constantly looking towards, I feel like this has become a really like a line through a lot of the narrative of the content that I post on social media that's consistent these days is everyone's always like, oh, well, my cousin tried this thing and it really worked for her, so I'm going to go do it too. And that's just really dangerous, right? Because it's not that simple and it's really nuanced, and everything you're saying, like you said, so many people can relate to this because if you haven't done all of the things that you just described, which I certainly have, I think that you've probably done at least one of them if you're listening to this. And it's because somewhere, someone else, something, whatever you want to call it, but an external factor drove you to make that decision.
Yeah. And that's so common where someone will choose to do something because somebody else did it, but they forget that everyone's body type is different. Everyone's lifestyle is different. Everyone's cultures are different. Everyone's likes and dislikes are different. Everyone's biology, what their body's able to digest, allergies, sensitivities, cooking skills, access to food. There's so many factors that come into play.
Yeah.
So even if the same two people with even the same body shape and size still follow the same diet, they still wouldn't have the same results. Right. And also we also think it would be worth mentioning is what people said it worked for her. They're not often looking like work, and I use lightly and using air quotes because worked probably is like they lost the weight, but did they keep it off?
Keep it off. Exactly.
Right. Not even weight loss. Like how's their relationship with food? Like how do they feel at social situations when it comes to, ordering in or ordering out? Is their plan flexible? Do they have normal bowel movements? How's their skin? How's their hair? Are they bloated all the time? Like there's so many other things, how's their performance in the gym? Like I could go on and on about all these things that actually matter. And when people are trying to figure out like, does it work, or it worked for her, it worked for him, or blah, blah, blah. When they say worked, they mean like they lost weight, but that's not the only, and it really isn't even like the main thing that we need to be focusing on, because weight loss doesn't equate to health. Behaviors, self-care, the things that you do to nourish your body, to take care of your body, to treat your body, that's eventually what yields to better health outcomes.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And before we continue on that talking point, I want to ask, just to give the audience a little more context too, of you entering the world of nutrition and dietetics. What was it for you? Like, was it the chicken or the egg, in the sense that you had noticed these challenges in your own life when you were younger, high school days, and that drove you to want to pursue it in college? Or had you already gone that route, but maybe your experience being in the field kind of caused you to have a change of heart, change your approach, or try all these different things to no avail?
Okay, so it's definitely both. So I went to school to be a dietitian because I wanted to learn how to eat. It started from a pretty it was, I had that restrictive period, the under eating, the over exercising. I realized that I wanted to help people who had eating disorders because even though I wasn't classified with an eating disorder, basically because my BMI didn't fit the criteria, but otherwise my eating patterns were pretty
disordered eating. Yeah, is still an eating disorder.
Yeah,
that's what
like
I
it's not
to say.
classified, but all that to say, at some point in my journey, I just started focusing on how food was going to make me feel. Right. And so instead of trying to looking a certain way, I was just focusing on oh, you know what, when I drink more water, I feel better. When I eat more vegetables, I feel better. When I eat more balanced, I feel better. And so it started from sorry to interrupt you, but I want to ask, did you develop that on your own? Because I think that's pretty interesting to hear. Yeah. So I definitely did in my I would say, so my early teen, my 14, I think 15 was when I was disordered eating around 14, 15, then 15, 16, I was that. And then that's your junior year in high school is when you go to meet with your guidance counselor and decide what you want to be. Yep. So it was right around then where I actually started having more confidence, more energy, because I let go of the restriction and instead just focus on small changes. So I felt really good in that. And so that's when I went to school to become a dietitian. And then I was learning so much. And I was like, well, I can experiment this. And I was like, I could try to lose weight. Now I know how to lose weight, so I should just do more. And I got caught back up into it in the pursuit of my degree. Okay. And then there's periods, I'm just to be honest, as a human, even though I have all this knowledge, I'm still human. So even I'm influenced by it. Right. Story of my life today. I went in and out of periods, I would say. But I will tell you that the past, I want to say maybe 2-ish years, I really have just transformed physically, mentally, emotionally. And meaning 4 years ago, I was the leanest version of me ever. And now I'm at a heavier weight and I'm happier than ever. So all that to say, when I say I've healed, that doesn't mean I lost the weight and kept it off. It means that I finally made peace with my body and realized that this is where my body feels the best at when I care for it and nurture it in this way without having to go to the extremes. And I'm so happy you brought that up, because it jogged my memory on the post I shared on my stories and us prepping for the podcast with what you said about body confidence. And I wanted to bring it up during the show too. And you just totally hit it, right? We can say the cliche thing of
finding the solution and the healing process is a journey, and it certainly is something that we always have to work at. I always like to say to clients, like, you need to remember that you're in this for perpetuity. And if you can't be good with the approach we're taking for even 6 months, what makes you think you're going to be able to do it for 60 years?
Exactly.
But I really love this post that you had put out maybe like in mid-November or early November, talking about the definition of body confidence and like loving your body at different phases, because it made me think of some of the negatives of how like that whole like toxic self-love movement has kind of gone in a direction of like, well, wait a second, we need to care about our bodies too. Like, yes, you can love yourself in all phases, but does that mean you're making decisions that are truly really healthy, even if you don't necessarily want to change your BMI or your body composition in any sort of capacity? And I felt like you had kind of struck the right balance between the two. So my question as a follow-up to this is, how did you get there, right? Like in the balance, in figuring out the balance for you, as you said, you started to gain all this knowledge and then you're like, well, what am I going to do with this all at once? What did it then take for you to get to be able to make the statement that you did? That body confidence is about looking in the mirror, being able to recognize that maybe you don't love yourself every single day and you're okay with wanting to change something, but also being aware of that the loving yourself piece is the commitment to making different decisions, even if you're not consistent with them all the time, at least taking steps in that direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, because I mean, honestly, the way my journey started is I came from this place of hate. I came from like, so before the disordered eating patterns, I was very harsh and critical on my body. So I never made any changes. I just hated what I saw, and I wrote about it in poems. It came up in my homework. I wrote about it in my journal. Looking in the mirror was like the scariest place. I hated it, and I blamed everything on my body. So it was just like this punishment. It came from this place of punishment. And so when I went on this pursuit of changing it because I hated it, it never felt like it was enough. And the methods that I chose to get there were not sustainable either. Right. So when I realized that, okay, this isn't the way, like it can't be the way, because I'm miserable and I'm not happy. I have no energy. Yeah. Like this is really not fun. And I also realized that when I met myself in the middle and gave myself compassion and really just kind of was like, this is your body. Like your body actually is an incredible thing. It does so many things for you. It shows up for you all the time. It's always there for you. As much as you've come from this place where you've hated it, you have it. You can't ignore it. We have a body. If we want to be alive, we have a body. Right. So we have to care and nurture our bodies. Right. And so I really had to have that question, like, am I actually caring for it when I'm abusing it and doing 2-a-days in the gym and under eating? Is that true care? Right. Am I caring for it when I'm saying screw it and binging and eating past the point of illness to the point where I would feel sick? Is that truly caring for it? Like, I really needed to treat it like I loved it, even though I didn't quite yet. Because then over time, it's think about in a relationship, right? Like you can tell someone you love them, but if you don't show someone you love them,
they're not staying
around. Yeah. Right. So, and maybe you don't, because also too in relationships, like you're just getting to know each other. Right. So you maybe are growing, you grow to love someone and you start to fall in love with someone because of the way they care for you and the way they treat you. Right. So totally. That's where, and it comes to in relationships, whether it's with your body or with somebody else, it's not about kind of what you think of that. It's basically how you treat that person or how you treat your body that's ultimately going to make it, work in the long run. So think about like your partner. Sometimes if you're in a relationship, like you're not going to be like fond of your partner every day. Like some things that they're going to do is going to piss you off. Right? Like sometimes you're just be like, what? But in general, if it's a healthy relationship, that like you're not going to judge the whole entire relationship on like this one moment, right? Whereas like if it's a toxic relationship and it's not great all the time, then that's a different story, right? But your body is there for you all of the time, and the more you care for it and treat it well and have that balance with it, the more it's going to work in your favor.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. And you teed that up perfectly to make the segue into relationships too, because the follow-up I had in my head was to ask you, When then did this idea of the connection to relationships start to become evident to you? And I would love to kind of weave into this. I know one of the big components of your book and some of the lessons that you try to focus on is just this general detachment of like your body, and you say it in a much more eloquent way, so you can correct me, but it's the detachment of your body to you, in the sense that it's like the focus of everything that you do, including your personal relationships. In this context of one of the posts that I read where you were explaining it, you were talking about the fact of like sometimes we tie the ideal relationship that we want to us having to like have that ideal body, or like we think that we can't be in a relationship with a certain person because we don't look the way that we want to, and shifting the focus away from that.
Yeah, totally. Because your body is a part of you. It's not all of you. Okay. So your body is a part of you. It is not all of you. Who you are, your value, your worth as a person is because of the person that you are, the things that you do, your characteristics, like you're funny, you're smart, you're witty, you're intelligent, you're caring, you're giving, you're sweet, you're spiritual, whatever it is, like that's who you are. What you look like is not who you are. It's a part of who you are, but it's not who you are. And so the one parallel obviously is that, you know, a lot of there's many parallels. That's why I wrote a book about it. But so I'll give you like what you're kind of sharing is like there's a lot of women who are not even putting themselves out there or giving themselves a chance or settling for like less than ideal circumstances because they don't feel like they're worthy. And that's what had happened to me. Like I was dating men and I was in these relationships and they clearly were not good fits. It was super toxic, but I so desperately wanted it to work. And I also had this fear, like, how was I ever going to find love again? Because I was in a bigger body, or even when I had lost the weight, I was still carrying this idea from when I was younger and just like, you know, just think like it was never enough and I needed to be thinner and all that stuff. And so there's like that tie to it of where women are holding themselves back from even going on dates or setting themselves up for being with someone because they feel like they don't look the part yet. And then there was like, before women would even start working with us, like in the 6 months of food freedom program, we basically watched them go from diet to diet, hoping each one was like, quote unquote, V1, right? And they would just go around like Cinderella's stepsisters trying to jam their feet into something that clearly wasn't a good fit for them. And I used to get so frustrated. Like, I really was like, why don't they realize that, like, okay, keto is not much different from Whole30, which is not much different from paleo, which is not much different from this, because you're just restricting. You're just choosing a different form of restriction, right? And you're trying to fit,
a little differently.
Fit your whole lifestyle into the diet rather than the diet fitting into your lifestyle, right? So I would get so frustrated, but then I like realized, holy crap, like I do the same thing. I dated 5 versions of the same guy, just with a different name and a different face. Like I basically like as much as I'm getting frustrated that these women are following basically the same diet just in a different book, or going back to the same thing, doing Weight Watchers for the 47th time, like, and don't they realize like it's just not going to work for them in the long run? Like, those are the things that like I was doing. Like, either I was, you know, with someone for a long period of time, I broke up with them, then I got into another relationship with someone, but it was basically, like I said, same story, same situation. They did not deserve my time and energy. I didn't see the value of my worth, and I gave way too much of myself. And then at the end, it didn't work out, and I was disappointed. But clearly, it wasn't supposed to be. They were not my person. They were not my fit, and that's that. And then I'd also have like in between moments, kind of like going back and forth to, you know, someone who clearly made it evident that they didn't want a long-term relationship, but I kind of got stuck in that honeymoon phase, and I really wanted to change that like short-term thing into like a long-term relationship. And I tried multiple times, and like it wasn't supposed to be. Right? It wasn't supposed to be. That wasn't how it was meant to be. And I had all the signs, all the red flags, all of it was clear and obvious, but I chose to ignore them because I so desperately believed that if I could just be in the relationship, then I could check the box off. I could be complete. Like, I made it. Right. And that's where a lot of women get stuck within their weight loss journey. It's kind of like they just like, they'll be happy when they lose the weight, and then but then that 5 pounds because another 5 pounds and another 5 pounds, and it never is enough because they were never really doing it they never really had the right focus in the beginning, which is to be happy and healthy, right? And so it's not the fact that you're in a relationship or the fact that you lost the 20 pounds that makes you happy and healthy. It's how you got there. What is the quality of your life? What is the quality of the relationship? What is the quality of your food? What is the quality of, you know, all of the things that are part of the journey? The journey is what makes you happy and healthy, right? So on this pursuit of to be happy when, but that's not it. We're in a life. It's a lifestyle. It's your whole life. You're going to have to be doing this stuff over and over again if you want to continue to see and feel the results.
Right. And I want to jam on the little comment that you made about the red flags, right? Because I think very similar to what she described in talking about jumping from keto to paleo to whatever it is, there's now a trend, and I follow a lot of like funny dating type accounts and stuff, so I'm sure I'm a little biased in that I just feel like I see it a lot because it's what I consume. But I think that there's a little bit of like a tongue-in-cheek trend going on with like posts about like red flags on Instagram in the context of dating. And I just had this thought pop into my head that I'd love to know your opinion on. Do you think that very similar to what's happened with diet culture in social media, like marketing to you, like, oh, this is it, this is the next thing, that a lot of women have almost kind of just accepted the fact that these guys out there are just filled with red flags and like it is what it is, and we have to deal with it? Because the more I feel like I talk to my girlfriends about online dating and stuff like that, we always joke around, or at least my friends do to me. They're like, you're so direct. Like, how are you okay with doing that? I'm like, because I don't want to put up with this bullshit. And they can't do it. Like, they can't find their voice. But then it's almost like, are we perpetuating this by making fun of it so much? Because it's like we're just accepting it. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Interesting. I will. So, but you're not accepting it.
Personally, no, but like culturally, like, or from like a societal perspective, like, are we just allowing this to happen a little bit because we're not enough people are using their voices?
Oh yeah, 100%. Because consumers, there's a thing called consumer demand, right? So if the consumer wants something, we'll provide it, right? So more and more people are starting to open up their minds and the ideas that, oh, wait a minute, actually, like, I don't have to look a certain way in order to be healthy and happy. Like, I can be healthy and happy in a bigger body and a bigger size. Like, that's crazy, right? But at first it sounded crazy, but the more you expose to it, you start to realize like, oh, wow, that's actually very true. Like, even though I'm in a bigger body now, I'm actually caring for it more. I'm no longer doing destructive things to it, whatever it is. There's so many things that we're seeing more and more now. And the more we challenge the narrative, you're going to see it more and more. But if you're complacent and you just kind of allow and you continue to either fall into the detoxes, the juice cleanses, the done for you meal plans, whatever it is that you're, considering to go into, like, it's going to keep happening because that's what people want. It's actually, now that I think about it, marketing things have been, that's why you really need to like learn like how to read between the lines, because people have been catching on where like they're starting to realize like diets really aren't the way. So what they're doing now, because marketing is brilliant, and people have lots of money and will abuse, taking advantage of like your mind. It's just insane. They'll basically are now all of these things that are truly diets, that are like meal plans, or, have a shake in a bar and eat one meal without carbs in a day. Like Octavia, that stuff.
I'm glad you said it, because I was about to bring it up.
Marketing it as a lifestyle change. That is not a lifestyle change. All. Can you take it with you on vacation? Would you enjoy your vacation if you paid for an all-inclusive resort, but you were only allowed to have the chicken, the vegetables, and a bar that you brought and a shake that you brought, and eat less than 1,200 calories a day? Is that a lifestyle change? No. Right. So that's where a lot of these programs now, like the consumer wants a lifestyle change. Right. But so now this marketing is now playing into that narrative. And now they're marketing things as lifestyle change, which, cutting out carbohydrates is not a lifestyle change, right? Doing something, a 1,200 calorie diet, is not a lifestyle change. So all that to say, we have to get really good at reading behind the lines and kind of asking, what does that mean? What are the details? Like, is it truly something that, I can stick to? And one of the questions I have people ask that I share in the book is, will this last past the honeymoon phase? And I think if you can ask that question, if you can really say to yourself, like, I don't think I could follow this for more than 6 months, then it's probably not worth even doing. Like, it's really probably not even.
It's really not. I won't even work with people who can't commit to me for 6 months. And initially, like, I was, in starting my business, I started with 3 months because I wanted to, build it up. But as I got more into it and was starting to spend more time working with somebody one-on-one, it became so quickly apparent that 3 wasn't enough. Because if we're sitting down together, getting on Zoom, whatever it is, and actually doing the work, like, I love that you brought up the lifestyle thing and you said like, can we actually define that? Because it's super elusive if you think about it. It's like the most broad, dumb, for lack of a better word, term, because it's like, what does that actually mean? Because if we need to break down lifestyle, like Krysta's lifestyle might be totally different from Toni's, or you and I being entrepreneurial, like our lifestyle is very different from someone who's, say, a nurse, and they have different challenges that you and I just aren't going to face when it comes to the really obvious one I think of with any type of client I work with who may do shift work is like they don't have time to sit down and eat. So then maybe we do need to have a conversation. Yeah. And maybe we do need to have a conversation about like when is the appropriate time to grab a protein bar versus that being like your only source of nutrition. Then we have an issue. Or are you not recovering enough and we don't need to have a food conversation? We need to really deep dive into realigning your sleep. And that's not going to happen overnight by any means because we're talking about habits. Right. And what I feel often than not is just that everything you and I are saying, and to tie it back to this whole contradiction with marketing, is none of that sexy. Like I did this Instagram reel the other day. It was that sound that's like, I got these, those, them. I don't know if you've seen it. No, a lot of businesses do it. I'll send it to you. And a lot of businesses I've seen do it with like their merchandise because they'll point to like all the different jewelry they sell or something. And I did it and I took all of my like meal containers, like my Tupperware of my prepped food, and I just kept stacking them on the counter. And I put in the post, if you have certain goals, your day probably looks like this. And I explained in the caption, none of that's sexy. It doesn't sell. It was annoying, if I'm being completely honest, for me to sit there when I really wanted to just go to bed to start thinking about the food that I was going to have the next day. But based on where I'm at in my lifestyle, my schedule, my day, and most importantly, my goals, that's what it's going to take. And it's not as nice sounding as somebody handing you a pre-planned meal list and being like, here's your snacks. Like I like to call Octavia the snack diet because it's mind blowing to me. And it doesn't sell. Like I'm asking you to do work. I'm asking you to do something that you probably don't want to do. But then there becomes that point to then say like, how bad do you actually want to reach a certain thing? Because maybe you don't actually want it that bad. And maybe we need to reassess our goals. Like maybe we need to be a little more realistic. Like I'm sure you're this way. I can tell just from so many of the comments you've already made. I always like to tell clients, I want to spend 6 months with you because I want you to walk before you can run and I need to meet you where you are. So if we're having conversation and ideally in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, I need to get this person eating more than let's, make a blanket statement, like more than 100 grams of protein a day. But right now they're only eating 50. It could take us 6 weeks to make that happen. Now we're close to 2 months. And that's only one goal I had for them to accomplish to get them ultimately to where they want to go. So we got to slow it down a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of people don't realize like 6 months sounds like a long time, but the amount of years that you've put into have these like disordered eating habits and behaviors to be able to heal that and fix that in 6 months, it really is life-changing. Like it really does really just free you from so much BS.
It does. It really does.
Yeah.
And to bring that then again back to these dating parallels, what for you, like, okay, you like to kind of just walk us through the timeline. Like you had this realization that you kept dating the same kind of guy, much to the question that I asked you of how did you get into the dietetics world? What changed for you personally to be able to realize like, wait a sec, I need to show up differently in dating, like for you to then ultimately attract, because I'm more of the camp of like alignment and attraction for you to be able to attract that person that did deserve your time and all of the effort you had kept trying to put in with the wrong person.
Yeah. Well, I needed to stop like shifting and changing my schedule, changing my boundaries. I used to be the person who like, I even said things because I was like afraid of like hurting somebody's feelings or like,
even if you didn't agree,
I was always saying what I thought they wanted to hear. So I was never really being true to myself. I was never being fully aligned with who I was and speaking what I believed. I was just saying what I thought they wanted to hear, or what they believed in or whatever. I kind of just was like, do you watch Selling Sunsets by any chance?
I don't watch like all the,
okay,
I
sorry,
have seen an episode or two.
One where one of the girls was talking about the other one is did she say sponge? No, I think she said blubber. She kind of just like is like she's like the person who just like does whatever. Like she kind of just like goes with whoever she's with.
Tries
like
to mold.
You're like, I forgot the term. Anyways, sidebar. But that's really how I was with relationships, because I so badly wanted to be loved and accepted, and I didn't feel like my body was where I wanted it to be, or it was like enough in the sense of the word, or whatever that is, so that like I felt like there was no room for me to really speak my truth. And so I was always afraid of like what they were going to say. So all that say, long story short, like now with my current boyfriend, we've been together for 3 years. So right before I was like, you know, single and just like kind of just, I was just like doing me. I really was just doing me. I was just like, so my business was my priority. So whereas in the past I might like, you know, if I had like an after like a networking event, maybe in the past what I would have done would be like, and the guy asked me on a date, let's say, I would move the networking event, because like I wanted to, you know, I was like afraid like, oh well, if I already said no to him before, I don't want to say no again, then he's gonna think I'm not interested, but I am interested, like. And so I would just like go all around like thinking and worrying about like what he would think. But really, like, if I, you know, basically with my current boyfriend, he just like loved how I was so driven and career oriented. And I truly am. That's who I am. I wasn't trying to be anything else. Like, that's who I am. So now he's liking me for me. He realizes like I'm motivated. At that point, I was working a full-time job, building my business on the side. Like, that was my priority. You know, I still got my workouts in. I still, you know, was eating well, like, but we also could have fun, but it was on like my schedule. There was some flexibility in it, but I wasn't like changing my entire life around to have him fit in it. You know, it was basically like, this is my lifestyle and this is your lifestyle, and hopefully they align, you know. And like we might have to negotiate and not negotiate, but we might have to communicate and shift a little bit, but it shouldn't be anything drastic, right? So one thing I learned, like as I was writing my book too, I realized like, okay, this is the parallel as well. So many people confuse sacrifice with compromise. So like in a sustainable nutrition plan, in a healthy relationship, like there is a little bit of compromise that has to happen, because it can't only be all about you and all that matters to you. Like their feelings matter too, right? And like when it comes to, you know, you were just talking about before, like depending on what your goals are, you might have to compromise, like, you know, happy hour for a workout if that's the only time you can get it in. Like there is a little bit of compromise, but what we don't want to do is confuse that with sacrifice, where now we never go to happy hour, or we never spend time with our friends, or we never go to a restaurant. Yeah, that all or nothing mentality. Or with relationships, you're like, oh, I like what I used to do. Like I sacrificed, like I would skip workouts to go on dates. I would skip, you know, this networking.
I'm smiling because I've totally done that.
Yeah, like all the things just to like make it work for them, but like forgetting that you matter too, you know. So that is when I shifted that. I mean, that's where like I love my boyfriend. I could like really get emotional because he's just so incredible, and we're just so real. We're just who we are. We just happen to love each other. Like we haven't.
I think that's such a beautiful way of putting it.
Yeah, it is just so refreshing. It's just so beautiful, because I never really had that before. You know, I thought I did, but I didn't. If I'm being honest, I really didn't.
And the whole piece on sacrifice versus compromise, I am totally stealing that from you, because I have recently recorded a couple podcasts focusing on holiday nutrition and how this is a difficult time of year for people. And I broke it down into different components to describe like, okay, these are the potential scenarios that you're going to run into. And one that's come up in almost every single episode, because it still relates to every facet of this, is an idea that I haven't been able to label. And the best thing I could come up with was like delayed sacrifice, or like calculated sacrifice was actually the term that I kind of settled on. And it's what you're describing to a T. And I was talking about it specifically in the context of understanding that I'm of the camp where, with a lot of the people I work with and focusing on macronutrients, what I really illustrate to them is like, no food is inherently good or bad. Somebody else, you or someone, put that label on it. And most importantly, it's not that you can't have anything. Like you can have everything. You just can't have everything at the same time. And that at the same time piece is where if you do the work of sitting down with somebody and allowing them to take that like zoomed out view of what your weekly nutrition, your daily nutrition, those food choices look like, you can then say, hey, in this particular example that I was describing, I had a client who was traveling for work and we were talking about what she wanted to order at this one restaurant. And she was like, I got to be honest, like, I don't really want to get a salad for lunch. Like, I don't like salads. I'm like, don't get the fucking salad for lunch. Like, we're not going to eat that. So I was like, what do you want to have? And she was like, well, I really want a sandwich. And if I'm being honest, like, I don't want to do a side salad or like vegetables. Like, I just want to get fries. And I said, okay, you just told me you wanted that. You're going to get the fries. And then this is where the calculation of the calculated sacrifice then comes in. What are we going to have for dinner? Yeah. And the consideration was like chicken that happened to be served with potatoes. And I said, boom, there's your swap. You told me you didn't want the veggies at lunch. We got to work the veggies in somewhere else because of the decision you made for that lunch. All is fine. It's just in the context of whatever else you ate and being able to kind of fit all of those things together. So I really, really appreciate what you just described in terms of that compromise versus sacrifice, because nowhere in that narrative was I trying to communicate, hey, you're never allowed to have fries. And like, that was her totally feeling like she had to conform to what was quote unquote healthy, of like, eat a salad. Like, I love to be that person. We want to bring it back to dates. I've had situations before where I'll go out to eat with a significant other and we laugh about it because like that person, if in this particular example that's popping into my head, I was with them for a long time and this wasn't the first time this happened. We had ordered some food and one of them was like chicken and salad or something like that. And the other one was a burger. And the server came over and put the salad in front of me. And he started laughing. He was like, no, that's definitely hers. And it's just like such the stereotype, right? So like, you don't have to eat the damn salad. Not to mention half the time those salads have more calories if you really thought about it. But,
if you use the dressing.
yeah. And all the other random things that are included in it. So I think that it's funny again to kind of go back to the point we made at the very beginning of the episode. It's just funny how maybe you're hyper focused on the food component, but all the other things that can start to come up for you, because at the end of the day, this whole food component that may be driving you to want to change is actually, if you're doing it the right way and changing things, like you said, decisions and habits, other areas of your life will only get better if you go about it in the right way. And you take the principles that you're trying to develop and the values that you're trying to maintain, then become a part of your entire life. Like the whole dating piece of like just going in and focusing on yourself. I think in hearing what you described of your journey of kind of that transition from punishing your body to where you are today, that's so indicative of how you felt in those relationships where you were like searching for something else that's missing versus where you're at with your boyfriend right now, and saying that you each are your own person and you come together and you just happen to have this great relationship that's built on communication, you having your own outside passions or whatever it is.
100%. Yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly it.
Are you familiar with the author, Young Pueblo? He's the best.
Yeah.
So he has a book that you should totally read. It's called Clarity and Connection. All the listeners out there should read it. I constantly put his quotes up on my Instagram stories. And he talks about this all the time. There's a lot of, his book is all short prose. They're written almost like poems, but you read them collectively and it still kind of flows like a book. And there's so many, and most of them are talking about like maturity and communication and relationships. But there's a few that focus on the fact that relationships are not about you looking for someone else to build your happiness and be your happiness. It's that you find your own happiness and your partner actually enhances it. And I feel like that same point that you were just making about your relationship of like, oh yeah, we happen to be in love too. It's a perfect parallel to that. It immediately made me think of him.
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely think that when it comes to relationships, your partner often also just reveals stuff too. Like there's times where there's parts that like he'll do something that it triggers me from like the past, but it actually has nothing to do with him. Right. Like, and that's very common in relationships. We kind of, if we don't heal our old stuff and we bring it into the new relationship, we got to work through that, because otherwise you're going to damage your new relationship where it has nothing to do with even that person. But then the last thing I did want to kind of just comment on as well is like, it's knowing who you are, but then also defining what it is that you want and deciding what are your deal breakers. Because if you don't do that, then you'll repeat the pattern as well.
Just like your nutrition goals. Like take the parallel to nutrition of like, okay, I just described these goals and like the steps that you probably need to take to get there at some point, then tie that back to the relationship piece. It's like defining what those deal breakers are. The ultimate goal being to be in a happy and healthy and successful relationship.
Right. Exactly.
So what are some of those, if you don't mind me asking, what are some of your deal breakers that you've been able to define now that have showed up for you in a better and more healthy relationship for both people, not just you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, the first one is like, and this is so silly because should be so foundational, but like, I definitely have overlooked so many things in the past.
I appreciate your honesty, though.
Yeah, but a deal breaker is good communication. Like I have to know that if I need you, you're going to be there. And
I don't think it's silly because let's jam on this piece. I don't know how you met your boyfriend, but I'm going to say this to all my friends out there who are trying to do Bumble, Hinge, and all those things. I think that has manifested and just recommitted to the idea of shitty communication, whether that's because people are constantly thinking in the back of their mind that they got another option, they can swipe so quickly, whatever it is. But I feel like it's not a silly thing to say that like basically you want good communication, because I feel like sometimes I need to bang my head against a wall. And I know most of my girlfriends feel the same exact way.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Other things would have to be, it's not that I'm necessarily actually am indifferent about having children, but here's a good example of like, say I did want to have children and the other person didn't. Like that's a deal breaker because our values aren't aligned. So that's like, that just made me think of it. What I was going to say is that I would want the person to be good with children, even though I don't have a child. I just think it tells a lot about a person. If you're like good with kids and that, you know, and like
you're patient.
Yeah. So that, and then, I don't, so that's the thing. I like, there's so many, I mean, lying, it's some of the obvious things that I've just been like, what I've learned from my past is that if I get that gut feeling, that red flag, I'm no longer dismissing it anymore. So I'm communicating it like, and going on to the communication thing, it's kind of like, I need to be able to say how I feel, and their reaction and response to that tells me a lot about them. So if we can't openly talk and be honest with each other about how we're feeling, then that's a deal breaker for me. Like if I feel like I'm not able to communicate what I have to say, or every time I say something, they twist my words, you know, that's a deal breaker. And in the past, what I've done is I've ignored it. And I've just chosen to no longer ignore it. When my gut's telling me something, I go with my gut.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people overlook that too, because of all the things you said initially about you trying to fit to be more like permeable to whatever that person, you thought what that person wanted.
Well, because you have to remember, everyone's always on their best behavior in the beginning, right? So sometimes a lot of people
honeymoon
are
phase
trying
you described.
Yeah, they're trying to relive the honeymoon phase, and they're like, oh, okay, well, we had this connection once and it was all great once, and so you keep trying to relive that, but now you're in a 2-year relationship where the only good part was the first like 3 to 4 months, and you keep trying to make something work that clearly wasn't supposed to work in the long run. That's what I did 3 times. So
yeah, it's all good. And you know what? I even have read something somewhere. It was like some kind of study or something, like some kind of psychology study that was talking about the fact that like you need at least 1 full year to truly get to know a person for who they actually are. And that you should, I think it was on another podcast, like maybe a Lewis Howes podcast. He was interviewing some kind of relationship coach or something like that. And it was really actually tying it back to like neuroscience and the brain and how we act as individuals in the context of relationship, and that you should kind of think twice, to your point of the whole honeymoon phase of like thinking back of what you just said about the first 3 or 4 months being good and trying to really just hold on to that. It's worth spending a full year with someone before you're like, okay, like this is my person. And if you know earlier than that, that shouldn't be a hard and fast rule. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't like dive right in and kind of keep this guard up for that reason. So I don't mean it in that context, but I really believe that that's true. I mean, I was with somebody for almost 4 years. I even got engaged, and I broke off that relationship after I was only 6 months away from my wedding. And there were certainly things that are very easy to say now, looking back on the experience. And it wasn't so much that it was a red flag because he was doing something that was wrong, or one of those stories of someone not treating you well. It was purely that our values just did not match up.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was harder to see because he truly was a very good person. And that is a really tricky situation to find yourself in.
That is. And that's the second question I have people ask themselves is, do I even like this? Meaning that it doesn't actually have to be terrible and toxic for you to leave it. You just might not really love it very much. And it's kind of like, I use the example of in The Notebook. If you ever watch the movie The Notebook, a lot of people does, like super romantic. But basically how she oh my God, why can't I remember her name? Rachel McAdams, but it's not Rachel McAdams. She's Claire? The actress. No.
What is it? I don't remember either.
I can't.
I want to Google it.
But she was with Noah. It'll come to me. Anyway, so she was with Noah, which was like real true love. And then she, ended up the family didn't approve. So then she had this life with someone who she did love him, but she wasn't really in love with him. Like she loved him, but like
the idea of the relationship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like the family accepted it. Everything was great, but she didn't really like it. She wasn't doing the things that lit her up. She was no longer like painting anymore. She wasn't doing her passions. Like it was okay. It was good. Mm-hmm. But she wanted great. She wanted really, really like true love, something real special. And so that you're right. That is a lot harder to leave an okay situation than it is to actually, believe it or not, to eventually be fed up with a toxic situation, because eventually it just makes you leave. But yeah, unfortunately, and I actually write about that in my book, my very first boyfriend in college. That's where it's like, I like wrote like how crazy it is, the fact that I decided to end that relationship.
Looking back
because it wasn't bad. It was actually good. I just was like, something was telling me that there's more for me out there. Mm-hmm. But then somehow I repeated the patterns. Like I said, we ebb and flow. But all that to say, like it doesn't actually have to be terrible for you to stop it. It could just be like not a good fit for you.
Now I have to ask, I don't know how much detail you go into on certain relationships that you've been in the book to kind of illustrate some of the patterns that you fell into, to demonstrate to the reader, like, hey, this could be a potential thing to watch out for. Here's how I personally got out of it. So maybe, and who knows if you've been talked to any of these people, but did you have any reservations about talking about your own dating experience in the context of like one of these guys reading it, and has anybody reached out to you at all?
Yeah, no one's reached out. I did think about it. I didn't use anybody's names.
Yeah.
Even clients' names, I changed them. But in the book, somehow when I was talking about relationships, I just said like my boyfriend at the time, or my ex, or my college boyfriend, or the guy I was dating. Like I was like super vague about it. Yeah. But if they read it, they would know who they were. Yeah. So surprisingly, no one has reached out, which is good for one of them. My last one was a complete narcissist, like literally like
I've been
terrible
in two of those.
So hopefully he never contacts me again, because and he shouldn't, because the police were involved. So that shouldn't happen. But the other ones, they may or may not, I don't know, but I don't care.
I have to ask, what do you think about this? Have you ever had this thought process of, when it does come to narcissistic relationships in particular, I think a lot of times, if you're a stronger female, because a narcissist's tendency to like love bomb and be really intense in their pursuit before that flip switches, let's just put it that way, occurs. Do you feel like a lot of your route, like your experience, for lack of a better word, in that type of relationship, do you think any of that was really influenced or perpetuated by you being a stronger female?
I honestly don't know. What I can tell you, one pattern I realized that I had to be honest with myself with, is because I'm so career oriented and so focused on just like, when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, and no one's going to stand in my way. Sometimes I do go in with blinders, and I might, so that's where I'll notice the red flags. I'll notice what's happening, but I am so fixated on like my business or what
Something
I have to do
else.
that
Yeah.
I'm not creating the space, or I kind of brush it off. It's like, it's not that bad, or it's not that big of a deal. And then I kind of settle and settle and settle.
Okay.
So unfortunately for me, what happens is things build. In regards to kind of me being a strong woman, I think there's so many strong women who just don't know their power. And then, yeah, of course it's going to challenge a narcissist, but most of the time I feel like narcissists take advantage of people who they like see a weak spot, you know, and they are good at it. And so you could be strong, but also have weak spots. And that's what was my case is, you know, he saw my weak spots and he took advantage.
Played into those in particular. Yeah. It's almost like they get in on your strength component, and then it's like them like maneuvering around by digging at those weak spots.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
And how have you created that space for yourself in identifying, hey, I actually have this pattern of creating this like, oh my gosh, I'm too busy. And I'm asking this question on purpose because I actually think that's the number one excuse when it comes to somebody addressing their nutrition. I'm too busy for me is an excuse. And I'm super guilty of it myself. I've caught myself saying it a lot in the last couple of months because I do have my podcast and an online business, but I also have a full-time job. And I've kind of gone backwards in the sense that I left a full-time job, went online, and then jumped back into a full-time job. And I'm trying to do all of it at once. The first thing I let slip was my own nutrition. And people are constantly like, well, you work in fitness, you must work out all day. And I'm like, no, I don't. And I know you're laughing because you can relate. So how did you create that space for yourself to recognize this is something that's important to Toni? She can't compromise on it and she's got to work on it.
Yeah.
And you're the only one who can work on it for yourself.
Yeah. Well, I think like if you do anything like journaling, or if you go to therapy, or even if you meditate, if you create some space for yourself, even in the busyness, you're probably going to keep coming back to something. And then it's up to you to just be like, this is like the 5th time I've had this thought. Like this is like, I need to get out of my own way, and I just have to do it. But do it in, you know, it doesn't have to be also too. I think we get caught up in how we used to do things, and we feel like we need to do them the same way, but we're living in a different sort of lifestyle, right? If things are busier now for you, then maybe your meal prep doesn't look like it used to, but you still prepare the food, but maybe you don't put them in the perfect portion containers, but at least you made it. You know,
I love that you said that.
Yeah.
100%.
Like
I had that come to Jesus with my coach, like literally a week ago.
Yeah.
She's like, you're trying to fit in the box of like what you could do 3 months ago. That was just frankly easier at the time. Like, let's compromise and like treat it like a fresh approach, even though a lot of the fundamentals are the same. Like, bring it back. Like, let's be realistic. You do that to your clients too. Yeah. And we just lose sight of that because we go back to what worked for us before and we think that's the answer.
Yeah.
I see that with a lot of people who are even pretty advanced in their, let's call it like advanced in their like nutrition education. Because I think one of the gaps that sometimes I help people walk through is if they are somebody who has had experience in working with a coach before, but then they take time off and they never really developed the exit strategy with that individual. So then they come back to you, or like not even come back, but like they come to you to get a different perspective. And they're like, well, I did this and this and this and this, and it all worked. And I feel some type of way about this because it's so me and it's so what I did. Like you said it earlier, you know, you weren't at the leanest you were compared to 4 years ago. And that's myself as well. And I look back at those photos and it's just funny because my life was in such a different place that so many of those decisions I made and the habits I was building were way more realistic. But more importantly, it's like funny that at the time I was like, I could be leaner. And now I'm like, damn, like you look skinny, like really like skinny is like, I have put on so much more muscle. And like, I've even had other people give me feedback, like, I like you better this way. So back to that body image conversation, it's all just so relative.
Yeah, it's so relative. And that's why at the end of the day, you need to love your decisions more than anybody else, because your perception, people, when I was at my leanest, I had my family members tell me I was getting too skinny when my family members were the ones who told me I was too fat as a kid. So do you know how like effed up
that's
that
so
is?
frustrating.
Like,
yeah, you're like, what?
So this is like, so that's why you can't do it for other people. You know, you really have to do it with yourself. And also when it comes to body image, like you can't trust your eyes all the time, especially if you come from a place where you were overweight at one place in your life. Like it's really hard to trust your eyes. So that's why you really have to go back to, what am I doing for myself? How am I caring for myself? What are my values? Am I aligned with them? them? Like, am I following through on the commitments that I said I was going to do, and how do I feel? Because ultimately that's what truly matters. And often when we have like a bad body image day, it's usually reflective of like, we didn't get a good night's sleep. We're not feeling well. Maybe we haven't been nourishing our bodies in the way
Something
we
happened
want
at
to.
work. You're stressed
Yeah,
out.
stressed out, like whatever it is, or your clothes just like look different, like depending on what you wear, that can even
You're on your cycle.
Yeah, there's so many things. So that's why it's like, even if you have, and this one thing I teach a lot in our program, like even if you have a bad body image day, you don't react to it in an extreme way, because then you're just playing into the cycle. Instead, replace any criticism with compassion. Just ask yourself what's really going on, because it's probably not about the body, like we talked about before. It's rarely about the food. What's bothering you right now, and maybe you need just a break. Maybe you're burnt out. Our bodies are a physical being, very similar to like the number on the scale. Like those are things that like are almost more tangible. So we tend to fixate and try to change
and
or
what
fix
we can measure all the time.
And what we can measure, we can see, but the things that actually matter, we can't really see them, right? Because it's really more importantly about how we're feeling. And we know, honestly, if we've been well, because there's been times where, and I know that you probably relate to this or have had clients where someone will comment at a party like, oh, you're looking really good, but in the back of your mind, you're like, I have not been caring for myself, like not even a little bit.
And then it's like, is the person saying this to patronize me right now?
Yeah, no, they're like, they're probably like really genuine about it, but it's like, that shouldn't matter, because you're not taking care of yourself in the way that you need to be.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why at the end of the day, you need to love your decisions more than anybody else. It will make your life so much better.
Are there any other big parallels that you highlight through your book that you want to leave with the listeners today, and just kind of giving them some other things to consider? I know we've really focused on this detachment and the decision-making process, and drawing the line in the sand on what your boundaries are and your values are. And of course, those definitely relate to not even just dating and nutrition, all aspects of your life. But are there any other kind of like big rocks for us?
So I would say we could just end with, like I already talked about the two big questions. There's 3 questions I really outline in the book. So the first is, will this last past the honeymoon phase? The second is, do I even like this? And then the last one really is the most important one, which is, what lessons did I learn from this? So it might be really hard for you to identify what's important to you, what your values are. You maybe you're struggling with that because you've done so many things in the past. So go back on what you've tried in the past, what worked well for you and what didn't, and be honest with your answers, right? It may have, if it worked because you lost weight, but you were bloated all the time and you were tired all the time, and it took up so much of your energy, like that doesn't,
it was all you were thinking about.
That's the part you didn't like, right? So the part you liked was the weight loss, or maybe you liked the idea of having accountability, right? We could work with that, right? So take the components of it that you liked, and then what were the components that you didn't like, and what lessons did you learn, and how can you bring that into your future so you know what to look for, what not to look for, all of those things, what to accept, what to be like, nah, not for me. What are your deal breakers? Those are the things that I think are super, super important, so that you don't repeat the same patterns and mistakes going into the future.
Do you think it's one thing, another combination of a lot? Like, is there something that we're not being taught younger that doesn't allow us to sit back and reflect on that question as you described it, or even all 3 questions? Do you think it's just the busyness of life, instant gratification? Like, what do you think has transpired over time that's now leading women to identify with all the sentiments that we're discussing, and needing the structure of a program or a book like yours to kind of put it all into context and be like, wait a sec, this doesn't make sense for me?
I mean, it's all of it, but diet culture is a big component of it. It's constantly, basically, we're just been so used to looking outside ourselves for so many years because of media and mixed messaging and the busy life, that we never really sit with ourselves. We were never really taught coping mechanisms of things like journaling and meditation and going for a mindful walk and, therapy and like listening to your inner voice. We're really just told, okay, you go to school and then you graduate, and then you go to another school and then you graduate, and then you get a job, and then you get a master's, and then you then you get another job, then you get married, you get a house, you have kids. Like that's like the life that we've been depicted as considered like a successful life. And so until you question the narrative, you're just going to go through the motions and just do what you've been told. But as, growing kids and adults, I would hope that anyone who's a parent teaches their kids to learn how to be themselves, instead of conforming into what they want them to be or what society thinks they should be, but really helping them to identify like what lights you up, what's your passion, because that's going to help them to build confidence, which is going to yield to so many other things. So I think it definitely, I mean, it stems from diet culture, it stems from just the society that we live in, the things that we're taught, certain parenting models and techniques, and all that to say that doesn't have to be, you know, how you end up. If you can like question the narrative and really just sit with yourself and ask yourself, like, what is it that I want? What is it that I need? And how can I deliver that to myself?
Well said. I want to ask you a fitness question before we go too, because we made the focus on the nutrition aspect and of course the dating aspect, but I saw that you posted about your journey at Orange Theory and getting back into running and everything.
Yeah.
I'd love to know, in your experience now and your journey and the knowledge that you've developed over time, and as your relationship has changed with not just food, but also exercise, how has that been for you in getting back into more of a high intensity workout? And I asked that question because in mentioning the whole component of working out twice a day, over exercising, a lot of times for a lot of people, I see this constantly with the women I work with, because I really help people who are in the group fitness space. And I think that's perpetuated this, like, let's work out too much, let's do too much cardio. How has that journey back into that been for you? Like, what, in your perspective of everything that you've been through and everything that you've learned and what you get to learn by working with other people, like, what does your relationship with those types of classes look like?
Oh God, so different. I used to beat myself up. I used to care about the splat points. I used to care about the calories. I used to felt like I needed to go multiple days a week. Honestly, now I'm really focused on my performance. I go 2 days a week because I like
awesome.
a good workout where I can challenge. Otherwise, I won't run. I won't, I won't do cardio. Like, I'll walk. I love walking.
Yeah.
But like, so it's a great challenge. I love that I don't have to think. I go in and I go out. And I don't get caught up in all of the challenges, the body fat percentage, the weight. I don't care about that stuff. I really don't. I used to measure myself. I used to care about, for some people, that's fine if that's your goal, but I've just let go of that because I'm just more so fixated on, you know what, it works for me. I get in 2 days a week. I get a great workout, 1 hour. And then on those other days, I might go for a walk. I might do yoga. I have a gym in my building. I'm very blessed now where I moved, where I have that accessibility. So I might do, you know, I'll have the Peloton app. So I might do, I do definitely love strength training. I happen to love it. So I'm lucky in that sense because it's really great for women. But if you don't love it, I would never force someone to do something they don't enjoy, but I genuinely do love it. So, you know, I supplement with that. And I love the community aspect of Orange Theory and a lot of community aspects of a lot of gyms, even like CrossFit gyms, like lots of stuff where sometimes if you go about it in the wrong way, it can be quite toxic and you can approach it as thinking harder, more, better is faster.
Yep.
But it's actually like the better, the small, like the less you do those high intensity training exercises, like the better you're actually going to feel. And it's all about working smarter and not harder. So I actually have a lot of clients who, because I go to Orange Theory, they're great. They, you know, have had me do free nutrition workshops, all that stuff. I've gotten a lot of clients with them. A lot of the clients, I feel bad because as Orange Theory like kind of supports me as a dietitian and like
sometimes you're telling people to pull back.
I'm telling the clients, I'm like, okay, well, if you're gonna go that often, can we walk? I was like, can we not
for real
kill ourselves every single time? Like, trust me, I promise you're gonna be so much happier.
I know. I'm so with you there because I even, you know, like I have clients that in growing my fitness career through group fitness first, that's just naturally the person that I work with. Also because I was that person who was like you, just like doing it every single day. And I had this mentality, and so many people I work with have this mentality that it's like, if I did not die, it didn't count as a good workout. And it took me months, and somebody with a polar opposite perspective, like somebody who comes from the world of bodybuilding, to get me out of it, because she just explained it in a way that was like, let's talk about this instead. Let's talk about your hormones. Let's talk about your sleep. And I'm so grateful because that's then been able to show up in my coaching. Yeah. But at the same time, it's such an interesting complex of like, I have a couple clients I can think of that I've actually like for the beginning amount of time of us working together, whether it's like 2, 3, or 6 months, I've actually like discouraged them to even have their gym membership because of where they were in the relationship with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's not uncommon where I think the majority of the people that come into like the 6 months of food freedom program, they're either like they're barely have ever stepped in a gym, like they're not even working out at all, right? The all or nothing mindset, right?
Yep.
Or they're like working out like crazy and not seeing results because they're overworking, over exercising, not fueling properly, not sleeping, not managing their stress. And so, they're always like, and you know, I was there though. I remember like having a rest day gave me so much anxiety.
I know.
So much anxiety. So
like FOMO.
For those listening, like we get you. We totally get you. Like we wouldn't be good at what we did if we didn't live the experience ourselves. So we have the education, the knowledge, but we also have the personal experience. So we totally understand. And like, but at the same time, we are also on the other end, and we can tell you that it's so freeing when you can finally just like chill and not stress and worry about the fact that you didn't get a workout in. Like it's
totally.
Yeah.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time. I could talk to you forever, and I'm sure we'll have you come back on the show when you write book 2, 3, and beyond. But I am really, really grateful for you sharing your story, telling us about your message, not just in the context of Once Upon a Diet, but your own personal experience, your coaching business, everything. So thank you so much. And I first and foremost want to acknowledge you for all of that, because as you just said, Toni, we get it because we've lived it too. And there's a lot of value in that. And that's really one of the big reasons why I went the podcasting route. And I know you also have a podcast yourself, so we'll let you plug that at the very end and I'll put it down in the show notes, but I'm sure you can relate to that statement. Yeah. Before you go, I like to do a quick, fun little lightning round at the end of all of my episodes that I didn't tell you about so that we can keep it off the cuff and fresh. But it's like light and easy, fun questions. So you ready?
Them. Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. We didn't get too much into favorite types of foods. We talked about our Frappuccino and our coffee, but is there one food that you just absolutely cannot live without? You could eat it for the rest of your life every day.
Okay, not to go on a tangent, but of all the things I removed from my diet, I am gluten-free, not because I just like have a really bad sensitivity to it. So It's sad that my favorite food is pizza, but like honestly,
there's some gluten-free
pizza with veggies. Like I honestly like genuinely love it. Like it's a regular, it's a once a week thing.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because I think there are certain points in us talking about like some things that work for us and not other people and trying to figure out what our boundaries are. I think one that I've seen a lot lately that's getting tested is there's a lot of women walking around with various GI issues and digestion problems that they are so used to that they just accept. So I totally respect that.
Yeah. I don't want people to go and like think they need to cut out gluten, but for me, I genuinely I'm very sensitive to it. So I feel better without it.
What is your go-to, like, I don't know if you have a sweet tooth or more of that sort of thing, but like, do you have a favorite dessert that you love?
I'm really not a dessert person.
Okay.
But when I do have a crave, that's the thing. When I'm craving something, then I'll just have whatever it is that I'm craving.
Comes to mind.
Okay. You know, it's funny. Like my boyfriend does have a sweet tooth, so whenever I buy something for me to occasionally have, when I occasionally have the craving, it's gone by the time I get to it. So like, I really don't eat a lot of sweets. But like if I'm out, you know, I like if I want it, like honestly for me, like the holidays, like I had pumpkin pie because I really love pumpkin pie. Like my version of like during the holidays, like nutmeg, it's like delicious. So technically it's not dessert, but it's like a drink that's like dessert. So I'm like, you know, stuff like that, but I'm not really big on sweets. Yeah.
Okay. What is in the context of your relationship and just looking at that journey for you, is there an activity or like an aspect of your relationship today that is kind of, I don't want to use the word non-negotiable because we talked about those different boundaries and you know, your deal breakers, but something that you and your boyfriend really enjoyed doing together that maybe wasn't a part of other relationship that you've been in before?
That's a good question.
I'm asking because I just have recently had with 2 different clients, this has come up in the past like 7 days, I think especially because of the holidays and alcohol, is because sometimes some clients can miss the fact that maybe their social life in terms of the decisions they make, they're like so focused on like food and events that they forget that there's like other stuff that they could go do.
Yeah. Well, because it's funny as you're saying that, because I mean, I hate to be cliche. Like we definitely like have date nights, but that's like what everybody does, you know, or not like what I've done in other relationships. But But what
But
I
maybe
was
making it a more of like a special thing.
yeah, but what I was really thinking about honestly is like it's gonna sound you guys are gonna like vomit, but like it's just like honestly he's just so funny. Like so it's like when we just are just like in the mornings when if we both don't have anything to do until like like later in the morning we get to like kind of sleep in and we just get to chill and laugh and like he can make something funny out of anything. You know,
love that.
So that's for me. I love to laugh and
that time together.
Yeah, he's just like he's just a jokester and I just love it. Yeah.
I think that's very sweet. I'll live vicariously through you. I don't think it's vomit worthy. I think it's more people need to hear that.
Like it's nothing like we don't do anything. That's like also we're like really boring. Like we're both introverts at heart. Like I'm extroverted because I have to be for my business and like but like I genuinely would also be kind of fine if I never left my house. So like and he's the same way. So like we have fun, but like I don't know. Also COVID happened. We're just like used to like not doing anything.
Yeah, it's very true. What is something, you've talked a lot about being career driven, but we didn't necessarily touch on this in the conversation in your growth, in your experience and not just like your business getting bigger, but more in your growth of experience as an entrepreneur and trying to tie back to finding that time to create the space and like meditating, journaling, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. What have you found that's been a very successful tool for you that's now kind of a part of your daily practice or your tool belt or whatever to help you keep your sanity when it comes to getting away from like just working all the time? Because I think we can certainly both attest to like how with even just a podcast alone or writing a book, like there's a lot of upkeep with this stuff and sometimes you can let it take over.
Oh, and I still do. So not saying that I like even it's funny because like even the things that are like supposed to give you that solitude, somehow I've even made those into routines.
Into work things.
Yeah, like work things. So but yeah, I mean being an entrepreneur is really hard. It's really hard to disconnect. Like so I think you're gonna always I don't want to say always, but I'm still battling with it.
Same.
It's just being fully transparent. Yeah, but I mean I definitely at the same time, I mean, getting my, my morning routine usually is, I do tapping meditation now. I used to do regular meditation. I've started doing tapping meditation. It helps me to be more engaged and it's definitely helped a lot with anxiety and like journaling. And then I have, there's a really, really gorgeous pond that if I just walk outside my apartment building, kind of up the block and back, it's like a 40-minute walk. If I go to the pond, around the pond and all the way back. And it's just so great to be in nature. And so
grounding
sometimes so like that's a pretty consistent routine that I have and I would say that I'm getting back into reading again. I'm usually like an audiobook listener, but I'm starting to read again. I'm finding that grounding. So but I'm still working on it. I don't have
good
like
for
clear
you,
answer.
Well, you shared a couple of good helpful tips, so we appreciate that. All right, well, very last question. I love everyone to of course tell where we can find you and all those things. But before you drop, hey, you can find me at this spot on Instagram, your website, etc. Give us your shameless plug. Tell us about the book, where we can download it. We've got a fun little contest for all of the listeners. So tell us about it.
Yeah. So for the first 10 people, I'm going to send Krysta a link where you can just put in your name, your email, and where you heard this where you heard this episode. And if you're part of the top 10 of whoever fills out that form, you're going to get a free signed copy of my book. Awesome. So the bonus is maybe you're listening to this in like 2022 or 2023, even like way later. And you're like, oh, I'm definitely not going to be number 10. Still fill it out because I'm going to still send you like a free downloadable, like daily nutrition checklist just to make sure you all your ducks in a row. So it's definitely worth filling out. And so I would love for you guys to kind of go there, maybe get the chance of being able to get a signed copy of my book.
Awesome. And tell us where we can connect with you on Instagram and everything.
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram at tips_with Toni with an I. I have my podcast and the book. If you're like, I don't want to take my chances, I just want to buy it. It's on Amazon. You can get the paperback version, Kindle version, or audio.
Awesome. Did you narrate your own audio? Bonus question.
I did.
Nice. How was that experience? Especially being a podcaster. I bet it was fun.
It was not.
Really?
Well, a couple things.
Did it feel weird to like read out loud your own writing or what?
Yeah. And as a podcaster, I just talk. I don't
Yeah.
script anything. I just talk.
Yeah.
So I had to read my stuff, which was like, I wrote it a bazillion times and reread
So it's
it a
kind of like, oh
bazillion
my
times.
God.
And I'm like,
yeah.
and then I want to make sure it's coming across in the right way. And anytime I have a stutter or a stir or an or I need to drink some water, I have to pause because it picks
Yeah.
up like everything. So it's not as easy as recording a podcast.
No, it's not. And when you record your podcasts, you pick up on like weird things that you do. Like, I don't want to do it because I know I'll want to cut it out when I listen to this recording before we drop the episode. But I make this weird little like tisk kind of sound when I say certain words, or I say and really draw out the and I'm like, oh, why did I say that? So I can imagine recording your book. You were like hyper sensitive to those things.
Super cautious of it. And then also there's construction going out outside my building. So right now I'm in my closet because Monday through Saturday 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. it's like drills. So I had to record after 5 o'clock at night. So I really wanted to just do one full day, but I had to like spread it out, and I'm a morning person. So after 5 p.m. I'm useless. So I had to like turn on this like, I'm like,
mode.
I'm recording this mode that was just like, it's just not how I'm wired. So it was not a pleasant experience, but it's out there. Just like the book. The book was not fun.
Writing
to write,
a book is hard.
It's there. It's in the universe now.
The important thing is getting your message out. And I think writing a book is so hard. And I've listened to other podcasts that talk about just goal setting in general. And a lot of times it might be an author that's describing it. And they say, like, if you really are determined to write a book, put your ego aside. If you feel that you need the support and structure of some kind of ghostwriting, it's going to help you make it happen, right? Mm-hmm. So even in describing what you just said, it might not be perfect and you had to change the circumstances a little bit to get the audio version out there, but at least you did it, and you can say that you did it. And that's a value of yours. You said, like, I'm the type of person that when they say they're going to do something, they commit to it. And how much more disappointed would you have been if you kept replaying this narrative of like, oh, I'll wait till the perfect time. So
yeah, totally. I mean,
good for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you so much again for joining me today. To all of our FYX listeners out there, you guys know the deal. If you liked this message, share it. And I want to add a point, since I'm only just now getting back into my interview episodes. I've been on this solo kick for a little while, just with the busyness of my schedule. When I encourage somebody to share an episode, and I'm sure Toni can relate to this, you could throw it up on your Instagram story, but it's really powerful if you listen to something and there's a specific friend in mind that you think could relate. Text it to them, start a conversation. I've got a lot of friends out there who I know listen to the same podcast as me, and then that becomes our dinner table conversation instead of us all being glued to our phones.
I love that.
Just something worth mentioning of like, there's lots of powerful ways to spread the message, and one of them can be right in your own interpersonal relationships, as easy as a text. Definitely. This has been another awesome episode of The FYX. Hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day from wherever you're listening from, and we will catch you next time.